they'll say, look at Sweden and Denmark and Norway. They're very prosperous, and they have less inequality, and people are doing very well over there. And it goes to show that ideologues like us are totally wrong, because you can have prosperity and you can have material well-being without a full-blown laissez-faire economy. They have a very heavy welfare state there with substantial government spending, and the people seem content enough. So why shouldn't we imitate the Scandinavian model here in the United States?
Well, I think the first misconception there is that the Scandinavians are somehow a socialist country. They are, and as far as education and healthcare goes and a few other things, but they really don't have the big occupational licensing laws. They don't have some of the permitting laws that we have to go through. Many sources rank them higher in economic freedom than in the United States. That's for a number of reasons. But trying to mimic their policy in the United States is misguided from the get-go because, one, it's just over 25 million people, so there's a lot less people. Also, that would be assuming you can transfer their system to one city managing the resources and demands for 300 million people, which, just going off observational evidence of our government's competency, I'm going to go ahead and say that they are not capable of doing that. And I think if you look at some other ways that they're different, so Denmark is this really happy country, right? They also rank higher in alcoholism and suicide. So clearly that measure is pretty subjective. And then they talk about, okay, well, how do they accomplish this? How do they accomplish this big welfare state? What are we going to do? Let's tax the wealthy. Let's tax the rich. Scandinavian governments spend 44% of their GDP, like in Norway, and 57% in Denmark. The United States spends 35%. So they spend a lot of money. They also collect a lot of money. In the United States, an average childless single worker has a 31.5% net tax burden. Scandinavia, the lowest country, Norway, has 36%. So it's higher taxes, higher spending. And not all of that spending necessarily goes to the welfare state. They do have more social spending, and so far as government spending goes. But if you adjust for certain tax structure variables, private spending, purchasing power, and GDP per capita, the United States quickly passes Scandinavian countries in social spending, mostly because we spend a lot more privately. We're a very charitable nation. And this was all documented by economists from the University of Arizona on data from 1900 to 2003. It was a wonderful piece.
I've done a couple of episodes on the Scandinavian thing, and you're right. There's something fishy about the happiness research, or at the very least, the way it's being spun. I had a professor from Denmark on the show who is a specialist in that area, and he says that it's totally wrong, absolutely wrong, what you see on Facebook, that Denmark is the happiest country in the world, and it must be because they have a high minimum wage and all these social services and so on and so forth. He says that has nothing to do with it at all. So I will link to that episode also at tomwoods.com/461, and also to my episode with Johan Norberg, who is in Sweden, who's written a lot about this, and who points out the pretty unimpressive jobs record of welfare state Sweden. Going up through the 1990s, he finds that during the period of this welfare state, the net number of private jobs created, private sector jobs, is zero, which is that statistic I found incredible. I had never heard before. So there's that. And then he reminds us of the old adage about the best way to get a small fortune is to start with a large fortune and whittle some of it away. And he says that's exactly the history of Sweden. They became a wealthy country through the free market, through the good fortune of being able to avoid war and not having their capital stock wiped out. And the result was they had all this wealth that they could then plunder for the welfare state. So the real story over there is not the comic book one that we typically get.